So Linda, I'm here today because FACETS is 38 years old and I wanted to understand the magical woman behind the idea to help others without reservation.
I grew up in the mountains of North Georgia. My family was very poor, but we were rich in spirit and love for each other. When I was in junior high school, I was invited to be in the Honor Society, but I didn't even know what it was because I grew up in a house with no books, no magazines. The person who invited me, his name was Miss Dora, and she told me, and she said, well, it costs $5 to join. And I said, well, no, I don't have $5. She said, well, I think it would be really good for you. Be around a lot of really smart people. I want you to come to my office, my classroom, because the janitor does not clean it as well as I'd like, and I'd like you to clean it. And for that, you will work for 6 or 8 weeks every lunchtime, and I will pay your $5. And she would come in and sit with me and talk to me. But then she started talking to me about going to college and that she thought there was something important I was supposed to do in this life. She's the reason I am who I am today. She made the difference, and she believed that you have a calling in your life, and that if you answer that calling and do what you're meant to do, that you'll be involved in activity that's worthwhile. And this is Linda Wimpey in her office in her home in the basement when we first started FACETS. When I first started FACETS, and it wasn't an official organization, my husband and the kids built shelves all in our garage and converted it to a food thing. And I believed then, and I believe now, that, oh, I don't want to get teary, helping people, serving people, is about being with people and valuing them as human beings. I was pretty overwhelmed by the fact that children were there and the homeless men on the street who were sleeping in the woods or under bridges, I found out, really didn't have adequate nutrition. So I'd like to say that I started FACETS because I wanted to feed the people when I knew they weren't getting the kind of nutrition they needed. But I think the basic idea was that I was gutsy enough to think that I could help those people figure out a different way to live. And the only way to do that was to get to know them. You can't just walk up to a stranger and say, you know, you shouldn't be living like this. I should put you, you know, you should do this, you should do that. That's really not how you make relationships and get people to change. I said to myself, how do we get to know friends and people, family members better, or strangers? And it's by breaking bread. You know, we sit down with them, we have coffee, we have a meal. So it was kind of, the food was a way of getting to know the people. And then trying to hear where they were and what they were doing and how they got there, which takes a lot of time to really build that kind of trust. What I used to say is, I dream a dream for them and hold a vision for them until they're able to hold it for themselves. This is one of my favorite pictures. It's me with Alan Brown. He stuttered terribly. I mean, most people couldn't have a conversation with him because they couldn't really understand what he was saying. The long and the short of the story is we actually developed a fantastic relationship with him. And I was able to get him into housing, and he lived there until he died. My favorite part of that story is that I went to see him in the hospital, and since he had no insurance, they kept him a few days and threw him out, and I wouldn't leave, so I wouldn't leave with him. So it was 5:30, 6 o'clock, whatever, and I wouldn't leave the hospital because he was gonna go back on the street and die. So I took him to the county government building in my car, And I walked in and they were closing, and they said, well, we don't have any, there's no shelter space for him, whatever. I mean, but I also wouldn't leave. So they finally put him in one of the motels at Boulevard Motel. And then from there, I got him into housing. But the night before he died, he called me from the hospital, and he's speaking to me with no stuttering, none. And he said to me, I feel so good, Linda. I'm going home in the morning. And at about 4 o'clock in the morning, the doctor called me from the hospital and said, Mr. Brown just died. And he said that on his paperwork, he had listed you as his sister. So I'm calling you to tell you your brother died. So no, I won't forget that story.
If you could speak directly to the community who's watching this film, what would you say to them about how to leverage the gap, the growing gap in affluence in Northern Virginia specifically?
I would say that it's up to each individual person to look at themselves and say, how can I make a difference here? We often think of large entities, like the government's going to take care of it, or 5 corporations are going to do it. And it's really about the individual people. It's looking not as a larger entity. Somebody else is going to take care of this problem, because it's really not a problem. These are human beings. These are real human beings who want the same things for their families as you and I do. But to ask people to kind of look at themselves and say, what can I bring to the table? Maybe it's my faith community. Maybe it's my workplace. Maybe it's my banking institution. All of those come together to make a community that's serving the people who need that help. So I would say, to each person, look at what you have that you could bring to the table.